So we're going to be here talking about literally the art and science of AI in media. Just to kick off, I'm going to get everyone on the panel to kind of go through and just give a brief introduction of yourself, and also maybe a one-liner on what AI means to you in your role in your organization. I'll start with Mark at the end.
Hi everyone, Mark Krebs from Publicis Media in Singapore. I'm the Southeast Asia Chief Strategy Officer, and I don't know, AI means to me making things a little easier, mostly kind of AI from a audience insights perspective.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kanika. I'm representing Taboola and the open web here. And I think a quick response to your question would be that AI is sort of transforming the way we use things and move things, right from the way we are drafting our briefs to creating our presentations, etc., to doing our creatives in a short amount of time on the marketing side. And on the consumer side, of course, today we are, if today a child wants to draw a picture and the mom wants to translate that into a quick story, she has the option of going on ChatGPT and doing that. So just a lot of transformation is happening thanks to AI. And from a Taboola lens, we are way ahead of the curve, and we have a bunch of tools that I'm sure as the panel progresses, we'd love to talk to you about that can really help you become a lot more efficient at what you're doing.
Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Smyth from GumGum. So if you don't know who GumGum are, we are an advanced AI ad tech platform across three key pillars, those pillars being contextual, having a human-like understanding of contextual, the power of creative and attention time metrics, obviously all of that powered by AI, hence being on the panel. And I would say for myself, AI for us as a business, not only from the side of the vendor side is efficiencies, but also for our partners and for our agencies, creating impact and scale. I think that's one of the key things that have been coming back from our clients over the last 12, 24 months about how can we drive impact and scale using AI as we start to move into this privacy-first world. So yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charnae Morris. I lead digital data and technology and e-commerce for Nestle, Purina, Petcare. And in terms of AI, I think it's possibilities and opportunities, but not just from a communications or marketing standpoint across the entire value chain. So as a manufacturer, if you think about the impact that AI has on our operations, all the way through our supply chain, and of course, through how we communicate with our consumers. So I think it's opportunity across the entire value chain.
Great. So I think just for the sake of clarity, we all know that AI isn't actually a new term. It's been around for at least 2 decades. Just takes different forms and different shapes. It's just getting a lot of attention right now because of a particular company chatting, talking about Scarlett Johansson, fake talking about Scarlett Johansson. So when we talk about that, we're talking about Gen AI. So if we maybe look at how AI and the latest developments in AI, can you maybe talk about how it's taking audience engagement to where it's not done before? Where do you see it going and trying to improve, or at least taking audience engagement to a place where it hasn't really ever ventured, but thanks to Gen AI now, we're going there. I might start with Charnae, since you're just next to me.
Sure. So I think when it comes to audience attention, I think it is not something that is infinite, it's finite, and I think we're in this attention economy. So if you think about AI from a generative AI standpoint, that just means a plethora of content that will basically be at the fingertips of a lot of our audiences. So I don't necessarily think it's a question of whether or not engagement will change. I think the bar will be raised in terms of we're all competing for that attention. So I think the bar will be raised in terms of capturing that engagement, but I don't necessarily think, because there's only 24 hours in a day. Unless we get more hours in a day, it is definitely going to be whoever wins, whoever drives the more impact, that will be the creative that basically resonates with their audience more. So I think creativity will be more important. And I know we talked about this previously. I think creativity is going to be very, very critical. And whether generative AI can meet that creativity demand, in my opinion, is a bit of a question mark. I think it's two-way. I think it's a push and pull.
So in terms of creativity then, Kanika, do you think that's going to do a lot of change in Gen AI? Will it change a lot with with its impact on creativity? Is it going to be a different form of creativity, or still the same but maybe faster, different shapes?
No, that's a really interesting question and a very important point. I would say that we need to combine the power of artificial intelligence with natural intelligence or human intelligence to really boost creativity and drive transformational change. So artificial intelligence, like, we often joke at Taboola that it's more like average intelligence, because a lot of the content is generative, it's predictive and transformed basis a lot of the existing data. It doesn't necessarily have what you call the human experience, the human touch, the spark of creativity and innovation. So I believe that maybe AI today is not placed to meet that creative demand. Maybe it is better placed to save time, drive higher efficiency, and just generally make you do better in your job and in your lives. But if we have to take things to the next level and drive true creative intervention and innovative work, then I think human intelligence will continue to power artificial intelligence to drive that sort of outcome.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Mark, how is GenAI then influencing the way that your platform is using or changing campaigns, how it's being pushed out? Has it made it more efficient in any way or more creative?
I think for sure, on the media side, you sort of touched on this idea that AI has been around for a long time. Most of the optimization in media is run by machine learning for some time now. Hinting at the more interesting stuff, what is Gen AI helping us do from a activation perspective? Coming back to the topic, for sure, it can kind of help with the creative optimization in real time. So some really interesting use cases there of using Gen AI to kind of do more personalization at scale and really personalize creatives on the fly. I think technologies have been there for a while now. I think it's just getting better and faster. I think it opens up on the creative side, like outside of the kind of mid-funnel, lower funnel stuff, a whole new canvas for doing really interesting ideas, which I think you were touching on before. Some of the things that we're thinking about doing now creatively and being able to do that in real time, create experiences that using Gen AI, you just couldn't do this stuff 2 years ago, let alone longer than that. So yeah, I find on the media side, Gen AI is probably helping a bit more upstream rather than just the campaign activation. It's helping us think about some of the stuff we can do in media planning and also strategy on the audience side. On the activation side, I feel a lot more on the creative side of things where it's impacting.
Are you actually applying Gen AI to any of your campaigns for your clients right now?
Yeah, 100%. Some really interesting work that's been happening on that front. We have a guy called Laurent Thévenet. My French accent is terrible. He kind of leads up this space for the region. And again, some of the campaigns that we're seeing, you can't even just think of doing those campaigns a few years ago. So really cutting edge stuff and very exciting. It's a really exciting time thinking about the use of Gen AI in advertising.
In fact, if I may just quickly add to that, at Taboola, what we do is that we open the entire suite of our creative shop for our clients and partners. And part of that is what we call the Gen AI Ad Maker. And the feedback we have on that is tremendous, and I'm taking a few seconds to share that with the audience, is that it helps you just transform your creative to suit the best practices of the open web, whether it's by way of converting static to motion, by way of maybe the call to action that you've put as part of your communication, et cetera, et cetera. There is so much of testing that you can do in a matter of seconds and minutes versus what you would probably do in hours and weeks. And you're able to bring together the power of your creative agency, your media agency, the client, and every decision maker in a way that tomorrow when you're using the Gen AI tool to actually lead to an implementation phase, it happens in a matter of a a day or two itself. So the kind of time that gets saved is amazing, and the kind of optimization and results that come at the end of the day just drive so much more value for your investment. And I think while we are navigating attention economy, value for investment becomes the centrifugal force, and I think that's where the whole AI bit starts to help.
Yeah, I'd say that's really interesting. So from a journey perspective, from GumGum, so we formerly Playground XYZ, we've been in the world of attention for the last 6-7 years, and I'd say the journey for us has evolved a lot. Originally, it was going into the agency opcos and speaking to them about attention and how can we help them on this journey of deprecation. I'd say over the last kind of 6 months, you asked about kind of like the evolution and where's it going and where it hasn't been before. For us, I think we're starting to move in to speak to agency opcos and brands a lot more strategically about kind of optimal attention. So we first started just saying, hey, look, attention, isn't it great? We're seeing the whole ecosystem evolve, but now we're actually starting to get to a stage of like, what does the right amount of attention actually mean for your brand? Like what the kind of attention the top 50 brands need versus the rest of the Fortune kind of 1,000 is very, very different. Some of those challenger brands have to work a lot harder for their attention. So we're now able to see the market start to move into, well, how do we understand attention by channel? So how do we understand attention by open web? How do we understand versus YouTube, Facebook, TikTok? And then you start to understand, and this is where I think it's very interesting with using AI technology to model this out of using panel-based environments. Of course, anyone that speaks about AI to some form of using deterministic or probabilistic methodologies will have to have a panel. And to do that, and to model that across things like social or other channels across the open web, I think that's where we're getting to a really interesting point of being able to actually optimize real-time attention like we've never been able to in the past. So I think that's where we're kind of evolving to as a market.
Are brands defining attention differently now because of Gen AI? I mean, you would, Nestle, come on. Do you give them more leeway to,
It's really hard to speak about attention without speaking about impact. And basically the measurement of that attention and how that attention translates into essentially leadership, right? In terms of we're in the business of selling brands to our consumers. So although I recognize the importance and want to capture the attention, and now we know that generative AI would produce, again, a plethora of content, I think the question is how can we ingest those attention algorithms, and how does that translate into understanding what's really impacting my brand? I think we don't want to basically generate content for content's sake. We don't want to be wasteful. So I think as much as we want to capture attention, I think we need to also be thinking about what does that mean from a business and brand impact standpoint, and really understanding what's driving what.
And you defined impact as brand awareness, brand sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So we define brand impact. It depends on the maturity of the brand. It depends on where the brand is from a reach standpoint. But we define impact. It can be awareness. It can be we want to drive trial because we want to drive penetration. It can be we want to drive loyalty. So I think at the end of the day, we need to be understanding how do we basically build in brand metrics, brand impact metrics into these attention algorithms, because it can't just be attention for attention's sake. I don't, with all due respect, it's not just about, the impressions that in the eyeballs and the fact that someone liked and shared my content, and it has to go beyond that. So
I think that's where it started. I think this conversation 2 years ago was just drive as much attention as possible, and that's going to be great. I can measure this and how many seconds somebody's actually looking at my ad, which is a great metric to have. But for the first time, I think to your kind of point there was that we can actually now tie it back to results. So we can start to look at what we know in this market across Southeast Asia as brand lift studies are super important. How can we tie attention metrics back to a brand lift study? How can we tie it back to actual sales? And I think that is where attention has been sat for quite a while as the upper funnel metric, but now we are coming, a bit like connected TV right now. All of those kind of metrics are blurring in terms of the funnel of how much value they're actually giving. I think now we're starting to look at attention using AI to measure this, optimize to it, and actually start tying it back to outcomes for the first time. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to build on that point, how this conversation seems to have progressed even over the last year or so. I thought that was a really interesting signal. It was maybe last week, Karen Nielsen-Field came out with a co-authored article talking about attention and also passive attention. And this was bubbling for a while, because all of it's important, it's nuanced by brand, by vertical, and so on and so forth. And I think it's just starting to register exactly your point, which is we shouldn't just be buying attention carte blanche. We need to be very cognizant of what's the actual outcome and what's the context in which that campaign and that brand is operating in. Yeah.
How do you think Gen AI is going to change that? How attention is defined, how signals are defined?
I think it's interesting because obviously we're sat here and we've said the few jargon terms that probably everyone's listened to, like AI and Gen AI, and to be honest, this is the blurry part. We've talked about, machine learning's been around for quite a number of years, and Gen AI is this big scary thing. Like, I think, again, I can only talk from a corporate GumGum lens, from a Gen AI perspective, that of course change is coming, but change is coming how we see it from a beneficiary point. Again, back to efficiency, tying it back to what Gen AI can provide. But we have these products today. We have products like, again, by the way, this is not a pitch, but just as an FYI, we have a product called Catalyst. It's basically Gen AI, and we use that tool to pass over to brands and agencies if they so wish to, build and create original assets and allow the AI to basically on the fly do changes immediately. But I think from a Gen AI perspective, we're not there where clients, brands are giving full control. There's still an approval process for Catalyst, being very transparent. Like, it's, if I was to say a number about how many advertisers are actually using our Gen AI product, it's in the low percentiles today of like the 2-3%. Is that going to change and shift? Of course. But where Gen AI gets interesting for brands is being able to do the actual real-time A/B testing on the fly and allow the technology to do that. There's still a lot of developments to go in that, and that for us personally. I'll pass over to the panel for that.
No, absolutely. I just want to build on that for a second there. There's a very interesting study that has been done that says that today it's not the age of entertainment, it's not even the age of content, it is the age of distraction. And a lot of the times when we are on the phone, we are thumbing up and down our feeds, whether it's on social media or otherwise, and we are not even registering the content in a proper way. A lot of it is going into our subconscious because we just want to feel distracted from day-to-day life, and that's how we are spending time on the phone. I think the other role that Gen AI can play in this distraction economy is to ensure that we are able to generate that volume of content based on trends and insights that, again, come through AI, and that content is also generated using the tools that we have at our disposable today, which we didn't have earlier. So I feel like the consumer is in that mind space, and if we have to cater to that mind space, I think Gen AI is the answer. So to that extent, the timing of Gen AI couldn't be better because it's aligning to the consumer behavior and the needs of today. And I think that's where the brands can also tap in the future.
Okay, Kevin, for mentioning your product's name, everyone here gets a discount.
Of course. Discount code coming over.
So I just want to touch a little bit about how Kanika mentioned about how Gen AI is helping to keep up with the speed of content generation, right? Because one of the big key point about Gen AI is that you can now generate copies in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, depending on how fast you type into a prompt box. But with all the public LLMs, large language models that we're using today, it's public, right? It's generally available to everyone. How do you then differentiate your copy from someone else's if it's going to be, everyone's going to go to ChatGPT or, I don't know, Copilot if that becomes more popular than Chat? How do you differentiate yourself? Because then you go back to the same point. Everyone's content is the same. And whether your clients or you are asking for more Asian context, because we talk about contextual content as well, context to it. So because we're in a region that's very different, talking and mentioning chicken, if you happen to be in Geylang, could be a different meaning, to take on a different meaning to it. If you don't understand, ask me later. Based on local context, right? So is that something that you are also hearing a lot more of, that your APAC clients are wanting context as well as unique content generation amid all these public LLMs that are just floating around right now?
Yeah, I have a really interesting answer to that, and it comes actually from our clients in India. And what they say is that, if content is the king, then context is the queen. And it's really about placing your ad at the right time, at the right place, and of course, having the right content and communication. So I feel that what you mentioned about context is super, super critical. And a lot of that context actually in the Taboola ecosystem happens because our pixels are hard-coded across multiple publisher websites. Therefore, we are able to read these data signals and ensure that the ad is being served at the right time and at the right place. And then where GenAI does its magic is that it's able to elevate the content to make sure that the signals are read correctly for content generation as well. And I think that's where the real magic starts to happen. So it's the right place, right time, and the right ad. It's just about how you use GenAI or AI or machine learning in general to bring these three parameters together.
Charnae, you want to add because you're a brand?
Yes. So from a brand perspective, and from a creative perspective, I do think it's an art and a science. I think brands have to differentiate themselves, that we're in the business of making those connections with our end consumers through our brands. So I think the challenge I have is if we're all tapping into the same algorithm, and yes, there might be opportunities for us to include some company data, company imagery to make sure that whatever the output is, it basically is a reflection of the brand. It does beg the question, then where is the point of difference? So does that mean that from an internal organization standpoint, do we start to kind of think about building our own models as well with our own creative and what that could do from a content production standpoint, or partner and work with companies like these people on the stage? Sorry, don't want to call you people. I didn't catch your name.
They are humans.
They're human.
They're humans.
We'll grab a coffee later and get to know each other.
I'm a Gen AI.
So that's where I think there will always be a human element. I don't think we can be completely reliant. It goes back to the point that a lot of the data is historical. It is past data. So if you think about creativity, true creativity, you need stimuli. And if we're just tapping into what has already been produced, what has already been shared, it begs the question in terms of where is that stimuli. So that's where I think it's a balance of human, the art, and also the science. And I think we have to be mindful just to be aware of that balance and kind of hold ourselves accountable to that balance as well.
We had a really fun saying when I was on the brand side. It was garbage in, garbage out. So if you put a brief or you put some input which is garbage and not correct, even in today's scenario, no amount of AI can help you turn that into better content. So what you said, human intervention, is spot on. And only if you give the right input can you hope to get the right output. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add that I think this is where, on agency side, we can help and kind of consult in this space to a degree so that we become a little bit less reliant on what happens when you're already activating the campaign to ensure that the brand is kind of distinctive and different. So on the creative side is where, for sure, tools and technology helps a lot. We are deploying what we call like a brand cockpit, which is essentially a privacy-safe Gen AI, which is trained on the brand style guide specific for that client. So rather than coming up with those kind of generic open source places where you can be creating, it's trained on your own library of assets and your style guide and how to do things, and obviously consistency over time and distinctive brand assets. So on the creative side, that's the right way to think about it. And then on the media side as well, I mean, I think attention is kind of one element of what we should be thinking about. We touched on context as well, even sustainability goals. So the way Publicis is sort of setting itself up in that space is to just ensure that we're thinking about the sort of cascading goals that client might have. So fulfilling, say, a sales goal or a brand goal, and then in parallel maybe hitting other goals, sustainability and so on and so forth. Once those goals are set up, this is where machine learning can come in to start to analyze existing campaign data to then come up with custom algorithms. So that's where we think the combination of those two kinds of technologies that really ensures that the client is showing up in different contexts at different times with different KPIs with their creative, not some kind of genericized creative.
I'll just add to that because I think that's an important piece around like the contextual AI and how it's evolved and how it's being used now. I think predominantly we've looked at contextual as a very metadata strategy of like looking at and crawling keywords on a page. Where contextual is moving to is essentially with AI a human-like understanding of the content. So we're able to, with partners like Publicis and clients, start to be able to actually give them a little bit more confidence about areas they're appearing in with safeguards around AI in terms of brand safety, understanding sentiment, what's going on around the page versus just a standardized crawling. And that's where AI is giving us that new power and actually scaling. So a large problem around just a standard metadata keyword strategy of doing context is it actually just decimates scale. It takes out so much supply from the open web that inherently is actually, I think there was some recent data talking about that only about 3% of the open web is in kind of negative brand safety areas. So what generally a keyword strategy does is rip out loads of supply, and we've probably all heard this type of stuff, but you're reading a kind of like menu or recipe and it's talking about killer ingredients, well that's gone. And I think with using AI is we're starting to understand true sentiment within a page, like how is the messaging talking about the word killer gloss, killer makeup, killer recipes, and that's where I think AI is enabling us to actually rescale up the industry and be able to deliver a campaign objectives and KPIs by using tech.
But speaking of humans, though, if you look far into the future, and this is quite far off, according to a Dentsu consumer vision study, they found that in Asia Pacific, 88%, which is the highest in the worldwide study, 88% of APAC respondents or consumers are likely to delegate personal scheduling duties or tasks to an AI assistant. And they are actually just wanting to use AI as gatekeepers. So basically, they want the AI to do ad vetting for them, to sit in for a user focus group for them, and only interact with a brand once they know that the different filters have been made by the AI first. That's still 10 years in the future. There's a lot of time for tech vendors to actually screw up the market and Scarlett Johansson their way through it and freak out consumers, and they'll go back to being humans. But assuming 10 years down the road, humans will start really delegating to AIs, and brands are no longer talking to a human anymore, at least for the first 3 rounds. Does that kind of makes things a bit complicated for you guys to measure signals or measure attention and to capture attention?
I can't even imagine that. I wouldn't recommend it at all. So to whoever, quite honestly, I think it's like you said, right? There is so much to be read through body language. There is so much to be read through vibe. And a lot of the time we see that people actually give false responses in a survey because they want to represent themselves in a certain way. I'm sure they'll do the same with AI. So I think on the trust journey, there is still a long way to go, and this will actually disrupt that trust and may not be the best use. So I think there are a lot of other avenues where AI can still be used in a more creative way. So maybe that we fully use first before we maybe go to those kind of ideas.
Anyone else want to? Charnae?
So consumer centricity is so important to our business. So for me, I kind of share the same sentiment in terms I don't necessarily think replacing humans will give us the insight that we need. So the world will evolve, I'm sure, and we'll have to pivot. But again, I think we need to kind of maintain that human element, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer that we are reaching. So it begs the question, and how would we be able to connect? How do we remain consumer-centric? So it could be disruptive.
Yeah. So final question then, just give us a one-liner on how you want AI to redefine audience engagement. How you personally want AI to redefine audience engagement. So let's start with Mark again.
Can I say a little swear word? I'd just love to see less shit ads on the internet. That would be a good start. How it can define audience engagement. There's a bit of truth to that. For sure, it should help us have more useful, engaging, entertaining ads for those kind of long-term brand building, and for shorter-term, more relevant and informative and useful advertising. And I think at the moment, I think some marketers do a good job of some part of that equation and less good, and I think hopefully what it means is we all collectively get better at all of it, having both of those modes. So I hope that it helps us get a better balance of marketing and advertising going forward.
I think as an industry we're getting there.
Yeah.
With the crappy ads. I think personalisation. I think to some degree, but that's basically the core of what we do. We at the heart of what we do at GumGum is creative. It's creative first. That's our first kind of access to the consumer. But I would say, I think it's actually using AI to get back to personalisation. I think there's an industry problem of like cheap reach and open web supply that maybe isn't as premium. Who classifies premium is at the eye of the beholder. But I think for us is like I don't actually think users or consumers actually mind ads to some degree if they're interactive and they're the right time, the right place, the right mindset. I think actually it's making sure that we're not bombarding high frequency, annoying users, and technology is there to help us actually engage with a one-on-one message with personalization that actually doesn't tend to annoy you and give you a good experience with the user. So I think hopefully that's the end point of where we are. No timelines on that, but yeah.
Kanika?
I think what AI will do is essentially help increase audience engagement in a more qualitative manner. What I mean by that is that audience engagement can actually transform into real action and meaningful action by being able to crack the attention dynamic using AI the right way. So for example, ads will be served to consumers after you've read deeply into their interests, their likes, dislikes, and their search journey on the web. On top of that, the content in the ads will be optimized for better performance because you're using tools like GenAI Ad Maker, Creative Shop, etc., etc. On top of that, you will be able to then retarget and engage this audience much better because, again, you've used AI to fuel that machine learning and ensure that whatever you're serving is finally at the right place, right time, and also the right content. So I think this is the holy trifecta, and ultimately it's just going to increase audience attention if you're using it right.
So I second everything they said. I think it'll just raise the bar. I think if we are able to tie attention to measurement, I think by default, those unfortunate bad ads will basically cease to exist, right? So if you are technically looking at not just attention, but what the impact of that intention
We've been
had.
talking about this for the last 20 years, getting better ads, getting better measurements.
Hopefully it'll happen, hopefully.
I think we are close to solving it.
Better AI then. Thank you so much for your time. The panelists will still be around, I guess,
Yeah.
for you guys to
Thank you.
ask them questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.